So, Tanks for the Memories happened. It was a great episode, fantastically funny, and probably one of the first episodes to focus very exclusively on Rainbow Dash. Yeah, she's had episodes to herself in the past, but I think this is the first episode to give her a majority of the screen time on her own without having her pair up with another one of the main six. Well, at least Season 2 with the Read It and Weep story. And then we come to this scene, which somehow manages to be really funny and really sad at the same time. Actually appropriate when you consider that you could very easily substitute out the word hibernate for die, which really changes up the context of this episode, and how Rainbow Dash is essentially going through all 5 stages of grief over the course of the show. And then we get this line.
Applejack cries on the inside, Twilight!
It's true.
That is perhaps one of the best things Applejack has said in quite a long time. It's a funny line, right? Funny, and says a lot of interesting things about AJ, and thus, not long after the episode aired, we were given this short little piece written by Arwhale. It takes place entirely in the head of Applejack during this scene as she contemplates her thoughts on the whole situation. And those thoughts are quite heartbreaking, it turns out. The piece is short, only about 1,100 words, and in that short space, it manages to tug at all the feels even harder than the episode did. This does leave me at a bit of a disadvantage though, because when it comes to discussing a story this short, where the nature is just exploring a character's thoughts during a particular moment in time, I can't really discuss the plot without spoiling it in its entirety. So for the first time on one of these reviews, I have to say that you go and read the story before you watch the review. So pause here, go and click the link in the description, and spend the 5 or so minutes you'll need to read the story. I'll wait. And we're back! Okay, for those who actually didn't take my warning seriously, this is your last chance to bow out. I will pretty much be spoiling the story in its entirety for the sake of the review. So here's your plot summary. Applejack, during the events of the crying scene in Tanks for the Memories, thinks about the fact that she's not crying, not even on the inside. She thinks about how immature and foolish she finds Rainbow for crying over her pet having to leave for a few months when he'll eventually return to her, when Applejack has suffered a loss that she won't ever be able to reverse, and how she's ashamed of herself for even thinking something like that. And that's it, really. Nothing beyond Applejack's thoughts on the situation. I've seen a few different attempts at the same sort of premise, taking a moment in the show that was meant to be a joke, or just a little quick scene not meant to amount to much, and getting into a character's head, going over the situation, how it makes them feel, and how it affects them on a deeper level. A lot of them suffer from the exact same problem. They're too long. The writer has the character waffle back and forth on the issue, constantly changing their minds or going off on tangents that don't need to be there, or just wasting the reader's time. A look into a character's mind and a study of what they could potentially be thinking at any given moment can be very interesting, but it needs to be concise, it needs to be focused, and above all, it needs to feel like something the character would think. Crying on the Inside by Arwhale manages to completely avoid these problems. It is a short read, as I've pointed out. Applejack's thoughts are focused and consistent and follow a logical progression. And I can imagine Applejack having these thoughts, which is the most important part about writing entirely in a character's mind. If I don't believe I'm inside a character's head, then the entire story sort of falls apart. The conflict that Applejack has is a very believable one as well. She's a very pragmatic, logical pony. While she's not heartless nor apathetic, her stance here is definitely understandable, especially with the way she frames her thoughts around comparing Rainbow's temporary loss with her permanent one, and how she knows that she shouldn't feel callous towards her friend's sadness. What makes it better is that Applejack's loss is never stated for what it is. It's pretty obvious that she's referring to her parents, but never once does she refer to the fact directly. We, the audience, know what she's referring to, but the fact that she still has difficulty even thinking about it shows that it still hurts her, and the situation, a friend who's crying waterfalls over having to let a pet hibernate for 3, maybe 4 months at most, understandably bothers her. Rainbow's going to see Tank again come spring. she's never going to see her parents again. And in the end, she calms down, she apologizes in her mind, and she wishes Rainbow the best of luck on a petless winter. Again, very understandable and very in character for Applejack. Of course, she wouldn't say any of this out loud, she doesn't want to hurt her friend, but the fact that in a passionate moment she had these thoughts, she calmed down enough to realize that those thoughts made her feel bad, and finally accepted the situation enough to be there for her friend, just feels right. This just rings more true to me than Pinky secretly being depressed or Spike resenting Twilight for how he's treated, which are semi-common thought fics, by the way. And to those who say, oh, but Applejack wouldn't lie to her friends like this. 1. Applejack may be honest, but she's not defined by her honesty. She has told lies before, she's omitted truth before, and in this instance, do you really think it would be an appropriate time for her to bring up these issues with Rainbow's sadness? No. So even in the context of the episode and this scene, I can totally imagine her having these thoughts. This is a great little character piece, and I highly recommend that you check it out. But only after you've seen the episode, however. Context is a must for this one since it's so intrinsically linked to that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, and you should have, then I can definitely say this is worth a read if you're interested in looking at a particular line in a very different light than how it was presented. Well done, Arwhale. A+. I'm eagerly awaiting to see the sequel when we get an in-depth explanation as to why Twilight wasn't sad in this scene either. Because overanalyzing concepts like this in a kid's show is really important, damn it.